How concerned are you with the state of mental health? More craziness to come? Do we even stand a chance in 2019? I think one of our biggest challenges is to not be too desensitized with all the madness going on. And if you look in the news cycle and in social media, the opioid crisis, school shootings, political tribalism, gender pronouns, sexuality this, sexuality that. Fuck. It's exhausting. So periodically, something jarring pops up in the world, and I ask myself the question of, fuck, man, what's going on? So I'll look at the craziness of the day, and I'll try to make some sense of it. Like, how do we get here yet again? What is this? And a couple of days ago, I was reading an article, and I'm not going to say the name of the school shooter, and I'm not going to mention the state. But it did make me think of a movie that came out in the late 90s, and that movie was American History X, which starred Edward Norton. And Edward Norton, he plays this hardcore neo-Nazi character named Derek. And I'm sure you can imagine Derek, like many neo-Nazis in real life, was bred and socialized with hatred and violence and very narrow-minded belief systems toward non-whites, to put it at the least. So in the movie, he kills two young black men, goes to prison, and from there, there's this whole journey of him reflecting on his life choices, and he dives a lot deeper into his own identity and issues of race and, a whole host of other issues. And I won't spoil the whole plot for those of you who may want to see the movie and you haven't seen it, but I think it was a great movie, and I think you'll enjoy it. And there's a lot to be learned. But like, looking much broader, I wonder sometimes what makes us so vulnerable to absorbing these toxic belief systems and these poor self-images and other bad habits. And it's really amazing when you look at us adults in our 30s and 40s and 50s, how much emotional clutter we accumulate over a lifetime. And quite honestly, I don't feel like I have a solid grasp on that. I don't feel like I have a solid theory. But I do know that some of us are really prone to being vulnerable to very particular situations and mindsets that are corrosive. And it's also pretty similar to how bacteria or viruses and disease need a certain set of conditions and environment so they can thrive in. And I think very much in the same manner, some of these toxic belief systems function in the same way. It's interesting how we as a society and as individuals obviously have a lot of good and positive qualities. I mean, come on, man. Otherwise, we'd have round-the-clock chaos here in the U.S., for example. But that's not the case. Thank God for that. But I think what's happening in parallel is that so much negative and self-defeating elements live right under our noses, seemingly in plain sight. And I just wonder, how can this be? Like, how do we go wrong with that? And I gave that some thought. And here's where I think the misconnection is. I think we incorrectly assume that some of our belief systems and our habits and our inner dialogues are harmless engagements when they're actually not. Negativity and toxicity don't always come in big moments, raining down on our heads. I think a lot of times they happen incrementally and then can lead to a big, very pronounced, tragic, or emphatic moment. And I think some of us acknowledge them as not being necessarily good in some cases, but I think we also dismiss them as being outright bad for us, and it's just plain old denial, and I think that's to our detriment. And you may not realize that you could really be at risk of accumulating even more unhealthy habits and even more unhealthy perceptions. So I think when you look at the net effect over a long course of time, as you age, you have God knows how many negative and toxic elements floating around in your subconscious, and on occasion, maybe rearing its ugly head in your everyday life. And unfortunately, with some people, there's no real checks and balance to eliminate these elements. So they just multiply and accumulate like roaches, and they're just scattering around in your brain. And it kind of really, it reminds me of a quote, and you Game of Thrones fans may remember this. Do you remember when Arya Stark, you remember what Arya Stark said when she got her revenge against House Frey? She said, "Leave one wolf alive and the sheep are never safe." So keeping that in mind, it begs the question, how can we protect ourselves from this? How can we address this? What needs to be acknowledged in terms of negative influences? So I think we can break it down to 3 types. So a few things to remember. The first type of influences that come from family and close friends and people very close to us, and they're well-meaning people. However, they unknowingly offer us bad or harmful advice because they may not know what they don't know. And you probably have seen a lot of these examples, like, remember when somebody gets accidentally pregnant? And so the counsel they give people is, well, you should have the child, even though you're not financially ready and you and the father don't get along. It's a blessing. Have that baby. Or you hear other versions of that, right? Like, hey, yeah, go ahead and eat that 5-foot stack of pancakes with 2 sticks of butter and that liter of syrup, even though the doctor said you should watch your diet. You deserve it. You're a good person. So then you move on to the second type, and this is a lot more dark, but we all know those people and institutions and organizations and companies that knowingly put trash out into the world, and they're only looking to fulfill their agenda and have virtually no interest in how damaging it may be to your life. And we're talking about the reality TVs of the world, the trashy reality TV, the propagandists, the crooked politicians, the racists. Those people. You don't have to think hard and long to get a few examples pop up in your head. And then there's a third type. You. No, yeah, you. We sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot with poor thoughts and poor habits. And then we buy into narratives that we're not good enough, pretty enough, handsome enough, penis ain't big enough, breasts aren't perky enough, not enough money, you don't have enough material shit, you're not thin enough, not muscular enough. It's no good. And then we do it to ourselves. So is there a solution? I think so. Be less cooperative. It Doesn't matter that this poor influence is your best friend, your lover, your parents, or yourself. Be less cooperative. And in some cases, don't cooperate at all with that. So what do I mean by being less cooperative? Well, look, before you allow yourself to get swept away in some kind of whirlwind of fuckery, give careful and reasonable thought to what it is you're being asked of and what you're involving yourself in before you commit to it. I think, man, sometimes we're so trusting and we're so impulsive. We blindly lean in to the agendas of those that want our time and our resources for ill and selfish reasons. You don't have to think very hard to think of examples. Just turn on your TV, power your computer on, open up a newspaper. You got some people like, hey, we're pissed off at this college professor or this actor or this athlete. Let's boycott them or protest. Let's get them fired. So then people, get swept away in this emotional firestorm. And then they're cheering and fuck him and fuck those assholes. So then you have this bandwagon of people protesting on social media or on some split screen on the news, some news station bitching about the target of the day without giving enough critical thought to what's going on, like what's really happening. And I'm not saying don't be upset when a situation reasonably calls for it. I'm saying be more of a critical thinker and less prone to mob mentality, less prone to lazy thinking. Don't be like that. Question people. Question yourself. Break out the whys. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Universally, you should know down to the letter where you stand on an issue and why. If not, you need to ask questions. You want me to do what? Why? What's the strongest argument of why I should watch this show where yet you got more people throwing drinks in each other's faces? What's the strongest argument why I should vote for this politician that clearly hates people of a certain race or background? Why should I reasonably advocate for someone to lose their job over an innocent mistake? Is that fair or just? Why do I need to read or watch the news cycle? This pool of information that not only is repetitive, but does not inform me properly, does not make me feel any better, and doesn't make me feel any smarter. Why do I need to get married? Why do I need to have children? Why do I have to declare as a Democrat or a Republican? If you don't know the answer to those questions, if you don't know what to do nothing. You don't always have to react. Look, do what baseball players do. Baseball players have something called plate discipline. I'll paraphrase. When you see a batter in the box at home plate? Plate discipline is when you're standing in the batter's box and a ball is coming toward you and you don't necessarily know if it's a ball you should be swinging the bat at. So having the discipline is to not do anything. You wait for the next pitch. Look, there's many ways to tell people with foul or half-baked agendas to fuck off. But here's one. Here's an effective way. And that way is to deny them access to you. Unplug. Take breaks. Clean the horseshit from your digital life. Get rid of, remove, or push away toxic acquaintances. Resist those that are hastily pushing you towards nonsense because they're not thinking. They want to bring you in on the stupid fun. oh, this person sucks, this company sucks. No, maybe you fucking suck. All right. Well, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. As I've said before, if you have comments or feedback, ideas for topics you want to hear, email address is info@themisconnected.com. We're on every platform: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, Google, the Google Store, even on YouTube, right? Social media, we're on Twitter, Misconnected P, that's Misconnected letter P. Instagram, The Misconnected Podcast. Patreon, just search The Misconnected Podcast. Thank you guys. Be well. Take care.